Hi everyone, thanks for joining me. Today I'll be tying the Alberto knot. Now if you've had problems in the past tying this knot, maybe you've had knot failures or maybe you just think it's too hard to tie, you need to watch this video because this will be the ultimate Alberto knot video. We'll go over with precise, slow, step-by-step instruction on how to tie the knot. We'll talk about some common mistakes you may have been making. We'll talk about some common problems that cause knot failure. And I'll be introducing you to Loon Outdoors UV Knot Sense. I use this on all of my Alberto knots, and this is why my Alberto knot is the ultimate Alberto knot. So I'm going to get home, we'll set up the cameras, and we'll get going. Let's check it out. All right, I'm back home. Let's get into tying this knot. Let's go over a few of the tools that you'll need, and just very basic tools for the most part. You'll need a good sharp pair of scissors. You'll need some type of device to cut your lines. And remember, we're going to be cutting and trimming either monofilament, fluorocarbon, and also braided lines. So get the appropriate tools that you can make a clean, precise cut. Now you'll see when I tie the knot, when I do my cut on the final tag ends, I always use a razor blade. We'll go over that, just how I cut it and why I do that later on in the video. So you'll need some good, precise cutting instruments to clean this knot up. When it comes to compressing the knot, I highly recommend that you don't use your bare hands, and I highly recommend that you don't use gloves. What I've done is I've made a couple little tools, and you can make these very simply out of a wooden dowel, or here I have PVC plastic. I think this is 3/4 inch PVC plastic. It's wrapped with electrical tape so that the line will grip into that tape. And what I use these for is when I am compressing the knot, which I believe is maybe the most important part of any what we call a fine grip knot, whether it's the Alberto knot or a FG knot or anything that you are going to be compressing. It's super important to make sure that you have a slow, tight compression and that knot gets compressed properly. So what I do with these is I wrap my line around it and I am able to give it a nice, slow, tight compression. We'll go over how these are used also. Now, last but not least, I want to talk about the final step that I do, which I believe makes this the ultimate Alberto knot. We're going to be adding something from Loon Outdoors. It's called UV Knot Sense, and when we complete the knot, we'll add just a touch of this, a drop, and we're going to roll it around in our fingers, and it's going to encase the knot, which will protect it, and it will also even out the tag ends of the knot so that it more freely will flow through your guides. And that's going to be Loon Outdoors UV Knot Sense. As the name implies, this stuff, it's kind of I'm going to call it a soft plastic polymer. And for it to set up, you need to use ultraviolet light. So generally, when I tie this knot, I am inside and I have an ultraviolet light. Now if you don't have an ultraviolet light, all you have to do if you are inside to tie the knot, bring it out in the sun, let the sun cure that knot or the UV knot sense, and that'll take about 15 seconds. If you are tying these outside on the boat, you want to make sure you are in the shade or tying, with the sun to your back. When you get ready to set this UV knot sense up, you just show it to the sun and it'll tighten up for you. Last but not least, when you're tying this knot, I believe, or any knot for that matter, it should be inspected at every process of the tying. You don't just tie the knot when you're done, look at it and okay it at that point. So unless you have really great vision, I highly recommend using a pair of glasses or even a magnifying glass so that as you are tying the knot, you can inspect it at every step of the process. All right, let's get in. We'll start tying the knot. The first thing I want to show you is 4 knots that I have here, and you'll see the circled knots at the top. Both of these are knots that were not tied properly or not cinched up properly. You can see they're very sloppy. The wraps of fluorocarbon that are around the monofilament, you could see the green monofilament line through the wraps. They did not compress properly. And these are knots that I'm simply going to look at and cut out. These will not make it to actual fishing conditions. Now, the bottom two knots, these are knots that are compressed properly. You'll see the top knot that I have circled here is the finish knot without the UV line sense on it. The bottom knot has the UV line sense on it, and you'll see that these knots are fully compressed. They're nice and tight, and on the bottom knot here you'll see that this one has the UV knot sense on it, and it's fully encased and protected. You can also see that the tips of this knot are a little bit, we'll call them cigar shaped, so this is going to help not only to protect the knot, but it's going to help it flow through the guides. So with that, let's get right into the knot. All right, so if you guys are not already aware of it, the Alberto knot is probably one of the most popular knots when it comes to connecting braided line to fluorocarbon or monofilament line. Today we'll be using a green monofilament line, and we'll be tying it to the yellow the yellow braided line. The yellow line is actually going to your reel. This green line is going to be your leader. This braided line will be compressing around the monofilament or fluoro that you use. The first thing that I like to do is when I am tying a loop, the first thing we'll have to do is make a loop in your leader, the monofilament. And I like to use about a 6-inch tag, especially if you're just becoming familiar with this knot. Give yourself plenty of line to work with. The first important step that I like to remind everyone about is this loop. Now, I've got a couple of examples here, and this is a loop that's a really wide loop, and I do not like to have this loop. This is not what I want to start with when it comes to tying the Alberto knot. I want to have a compressed loop, more like this. It's got a little point on it, and this has to do with when we start compressing it, it will compress much more easily for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this loop, and I'm going to pinch it with my finger and thumb, and I'll even kind of twist it around so that it makes this really nice tight loop. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to take and make about a 6-inch tag of our braided line, the yellow line. We're going to put that through the loop, and we're going to pinch it right here, just like this. And we're going to make sure we have about the same amount of tag in, about 6 inches, and this is how we're going to start the knot. So what we're going to do is basically wrap our wrap our braided line down around both ends of the mono this way. So I'm going to grab this knot, pinch it down right in here. I'm going to grab it, and I'm going to start making my loops. One, and what I could do here is I use these two fingers to pull it over, and then I grip it with this finger. That's 2, and that way I can keep these two the tag ends here kind of like this. That's 3, 4, 5, and 6. But this is the first place that I want to inspect this knot and make sure that all of these loops are nice and even and they're spread out. Now when I come back, I'm going to loop it back over itself this way 7 turns, and it's extremely important that this first loop that I come through is going to come over and come over this. It's going to come over itself right here. So let's see if we can get that on camera. See how that is right there? That's the first loop, and that is the most important loop. We'll get that on there. That's 1. That's 2. I want to compress this or pinch it. 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And what I'll do now is I'll look at this again to make sure I've got a pretty decent spread on this, and that looks pretty good. So I'm going to continue this knot. Okay, so we have the loops ready, and we're ready to take the tag end of our braid and run it back through the loop. Now you can see that both of these loops are coming through the same way. They're both going through the top and out the bottom. Now we're ready to start compressing this knot. Now my first compression, I'm not going to worry too much about. I'm just going to take this and I'm going to moisten it, And I'm going to take both tag ends and just pull it nice and gently. You can see that compressing just a little bit. Moisten it again, make sure it's compressing fairly gently. And I really like the way this is compressing here, and I think it's going to be a good knot. So what I'm going to do, just for purposes of demonstration, I want to cut these tag ends off so that they don't get in the way, so you can watch this knot compress as we do this. And here's where the tools come in handy. Let's get this out of here. So what I'll do is, it's a little bit awkward when I'm demonstrating this, but I'll try to wrap the mono around this 4 or 5 times. We'll get that set up. And then I'm going to take the the braid, and we're going to wrap this around several times. So this is what we have now. I'm going to moisten this again, and now I've got this where I can really just kind of see how that's compressing. I'm putting a little bit of pressure on it, but it's nice, slow, easy pressure. I'm going to continue to moisten it. I'm inspecting the knot the whole way, and as I pull this together, I want that knot to totally compress. If you can see that, the knot, it's fully compressed, it's nice and tight. You don't see any of the green monofilament showing through the braided line. So we're going to finish this knot up. This is where I will bring out my razor, and I also have a cutting block that I use so I get a nice, clean, precise cut. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the tag end of the mono, and I'm going to leave the tag end of the braid. How I do this is I put the knot on the cutting block, and I bend. This is the tag end. This way is going to be my leader that I'm going to be using, and I'll pull that like this, and we'll show you how that looks, so that I have a loop in it, and this part of the knot right here is exposed. This is where we're going to cut this tag end off, and I want a clean cut. And by doing this, when I cut it this way, I'm going to get not only a precise cut with this razor blade, but it's going to be at kind of an angle like this. So when I apply the UV knot sense, it's going to be an absolutely perfect knot that flows through your guide. So I have this in here, and hopefully you can see this. I'm going to clip that off. Now, that's a pretty darn clean cut. It's got a little bit on here that has a little nip on it, but what we're going to do to take care of that is we are going to take the UV knot sense, and we're going to put a drop just right here, just a little drop right in this half of the knot. And what I'm going to do is I'll put the drop on there, and I'm going to squeeze it together and roll it into my fingers so it makes a nice tapered in here. Now I have to work fast because the sun's not out right now, but there is still a little bit of UV light, and it will start to congeal the knot. Sometimes less is more here, so you don't need a whole lot. And you can see that I've got a little dollop of it right here. I'm going to take this, and I'm just going to roll it in my hands. It's already starting to set up a little bit, and I have that there. So what I'll do is take my UV light, and I'll hit this, and maybe when it's under the UV light, if you take a look right in here, you can see that it's making we'll call it a tapered end. Now that's what I want, and this is already set up. The nice thing about this UV knot sense is it is pliable. It's not like a super glue that gets super hard. Now once I have this side taken care of with the UV knot sense, then I can come back and put just a dab right here, just one little dab. That's what I got right there. We will roll that in our fingers. We're going to hit this with the light. We'll do this quickly. Then we're going to actually cut the tag end of our braid using the same method. We'll get in nice and tight. Oops, I don't like the way that's looking. This has to be over this way. There we go. Perfect. Hopefully you guys, this is magnified enough so that we can see this properly. We're going to get right in here and we're going to cut it off just like that. Last but not least, we're going to take just another little dollop of this, and it's going to go right here. That's all we've got. We're going to roll it around on our finger so it totally encases that knot. Then we're going to hit this like this. This is done. Okay, there it is, the finished knot. You've got some tapered ends and it's fully encased. That is the finished knot. Okay, you see the knot, you see the finished knot, you've seen the process, and if you've liked the video or you've learned anything, make sure you hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe, and it wouldn't hurt to tell a friend. I would appreciate that. It keeps the information flowing, keeps me out here doing the video. So thank you guys so much for watching. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to hook my boat up. I'm going to head down to the river, and I'm going to put some of these knots to the test. So once again, thanks for watching. Until the next video, we'll see you guys on the water.